I was a 4-time loser before I realized I was in the wrong game. When I was in prison, I used to have occasionally a hopeful thought or a dream. It was that, hey, wow, what if I got through all this and figured this all out and could get out and make something cool happen, you know? Wow, I didn't even know I was a dreamer, and here I am.
This journey you can't make up. I mean, this stuff, you couldn't write a script to this, and yet here you are living it and breathing it.
I remember being in prison late at night thinking, okay, things are really bad. If I ever get out of this, I'm gonna have a story to tell.
This was the face of crime.
Back then, burglary, armed robbery, drug dealing, police beating up.
Rumor is that you did a little time.
Yes, like 15 years.
So in less than a year's time, he's taken it from concept to recipe to store shelves.
Dave's Killer Bread.
Willamette Wheat called it the best bread in Portland.
Just say no, it's bread on drugs.
Dave is the next big thing.
Do you like Dave's Killer Bread?
Yeah.
People love Dave's loaves.
So many things to see, and I could be anything. But if I can't be free, then it's
Dave's Killer Bread made a killing. $40 million this year alone.
It just couldn't hardly be any better.
In 2005, we had roughly 30-something employees. Over the next 6 years, we grew into now having over 250 employees and making 2,700 loaves of bread per hour, nearly 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
I believe in accountability, tough love. It's the way I look at people coming out of prison. They have to be eager to learn. They have to be humble. What are people doing with their lives? I've learned to accept that opportunity and make the most of it. Good seeds aren't just cute little flax seeds with halos. We really can make the world a better place. One loaf of bread at a time.
Okay. I like it. Well, Dave, we get to do this again. Welcome, everyone. Dave and I had an interview about 7, 8 years ago, 2012, which began a lifetime friendship. We're really
Lots happened since then.
Lots happened since then, and a lot more to go.
Oh, yeah.
We're glad to be here. I've been to this conference before. It's one of the best I've ever been to for businesses. And so, first of all, thanks for the sponsors and the investors, the ones that are going to give out the prize money at the end. And all the contestants are winners, obviously, because they made it through that process. But they also learned a lot through the process. So anyway, it's great to be here. Dave, a lot has happened, and so I'm going to give you some questions, and we'll dialogue through all this. So one of the things, talking to outsiders, they look at Dave's Killer Bread, and they look at it as, tremendous success, and that, you spent your time in prison, got out of prison, went back to the family bakery, and became an instant success. Is that really how it went?
There was nothing easy about Dave's Killer Bread, and it didn't happen overnight. I was 43 years old when I got out of prison that last time, and when people ask me how long it took to make that, to create those recipes, I say 43 years. But when I got out, I was rocking and ready to go.
What were you in prison? I remember when I first interviewed you, I said 3 times, but you said no 4 times. What did you learn? What are some of the things you learned while you were in prison?
Well, at first I was always trying, the first few times I went to prison, I was always trying to learn to be a better criminal. Because, I was a dope addict, and dope was, the methamphetamine was more important to me than anything else. As long as I had that, I was okay. So becoming a better criminal made me a better dope addict. But that didn't work out because I kept going back to prison. So On the fourth time, I hit a bottom, and I raised the white, I waved the white flag, if you will. I surrendered, and I found humility, and it opened my mind up. Made me realize that I was okay. Because, I learned to be okay with me, and learning to accept yourself and go, hey, this is who I am, and now I can learn because I'm being myself. And it opened my mind up to the possibilities, and it was crazy after that. Beautiful.
Yeah, and I remember you mentioned that, and your dad passed away in your last prison term, and you were able to also not blame other people for your actions. You just had been making bad choices.
Yeah, I mean, you can sit around and blame people, and make excuses, and that just gives other people the power. You just give up your power when you do that, and it's so wonderful to be in charge.
So let's talk about the early days. You're out of prison, went back home, celebrated, correct, and put into this high position in the company. So tell us a little bit about the early days.
The early days, I wasn't in no high position. My brother put me to work just where he should have, at $12 an hour, on the line, filling in for absent bakers. I worked my ass off, and I loved every minute of it. I lived in my mom's garage. I drove an '89 Ford Ranger, and that was the first couple years of Dave's Killer Bread for me. I was still making an hourly rate, $15 an hour, working for 40 hours a week, a salary of $15 an hour. And I was actually working 80 hours or 100, whatever it took. And that was Dave's Killer Bread for a long time.
What, those early products, because you really got into innovation, into creativity, which you learned through a drafting class in prison.
Yeah.
So talk about the creativity that you learned there, that you had creative ability, and then how'd you leverage it in that early product formation?
Well, that was the other thing. When you asked what I learned in prison, when my mind opened up and I was given the opportunity to go to trade school for computer-aided drafting, it was an eye-opener for me. It made me realize I was a lot smarter than I thought. It doesn't mean I was, brilliant or anything, but I just realized that, hey, I'm okay, and I was knocking it out of the park on a regular basis. So, learning as a drafter, you essentially learn to replicate things that already exist and create a template. You have a template to work from to create a new product. And that's what I did in prison. I would turn a piece of furniture into a better piece of furniture. And I did the same thing with bread when I got out.
So you discovered there was a good seed in you.
Yeah.
Which,
if you know what a good seed, that's not only a tattoo on my back, but it's also the name of one of my loaves of bread.
yeah. So going to the marketing and the brand of the bread, how did you get the name of the brand, Dave's Killer Bread?
My brother wanted to call it, he kind of wanted it not to be an extension or to be, I always thought that I was going back to work with the family. That we're going to do this next phase of the family business. And we did, but it was kind of disguised under this Dave's Bread. That's what he wanted to call it. And I created a loaf of bread my first loaf of bread that I made was called Blues Bread. The second was Killer Bread. And to me, Killer Bread was just the best bread you could make, And people agreed it was killer. And next
they still
thing,
do.
Yeah, you got that knowing laugh right there. And so that, it was a no-brainer after. It just kind of started rolling off the tongue, Dave's Killer Bread.
So the company grew fast, rapidly, with you creating these amazing breads. Started with cookies, then went right into breads. And then in 2008 recession hit. And for you guys to take it to the next level, you needed to get financing, and it was very challenging to get financing. How did you get through that?
It was a kick-ass time for Dave's Killer Bread because, we wouldn't have even noticed a recession if we hadn't have gone to get a loan. Everybody's buying the bread. Nobody cares that it's a recession. They might not buy the yacht, but they're going to buy a loaf of bread that they love. So that we just kept growing through that recession time. But our bank at the time, who was the biggest bank in the world probably, was looking at us they didn't see us as a good risk, and they didn't give us the loan that we needed to grow. We were in a position where in 2008, where we had to move to a bigger facility in order to take on Costco. And Costco was who made me a millionaire. So, you know, I worked my ass off in Costco, but the point is that we needed that. We needed to grow, and they weren't, you know, we've had to find a small bank who would take a chance on us. We had to find advisors who could help us figure out what we needed to do. And we needed to make a business plan. Yeah. We never had a business plan before that.
And so talking about advisors, what did you learn through getting advisors at that stage? How important was that? I mean, obviously, it was critical at that point, but ongoing, what did you realize that you're not the smartest man in the shed?
Yeah, well, thanks a lot. But well, you know, I had learned that I always knew that I wasn't the smartest guy around.
Yeah.
And so I was always looking for people that could make me better, you know, opportunities that I could take advantage of. But it was interesting that the family, we all had to kind of swallow our pride and go, we don't know that. We don't know enough to make this work. You know, we're getting uncharted waters, unfamiliar territory. We're dealing with the Franzes and the Orowitz of the world, and it's cutthroat. And we just we made a lot of mistakes, but we had some help.
So you got your loan. Company is growing. You have a team of passionate people, talented people mixed in, and some of them family members. Mm-hmm. So there shouldn't have been any challenges to your success, correct?
Yeah, right. Okay, that was all we had was challenges, and you know, I could just list them on not 10 fingers. I'd have to just go with my toes too. There's no way I could go on and on. But you know, every challenge has a solution. You know, or you find something along the way. And I love that process where you challenge it. But one thing that never really became, never put a smile on my face was the family dynamic. We just couldn't quite come to terms with each other. I came out of prison, this guy, you know, this cowboy shooting from the hip. My nephew had just gotten out of college. He graduated in 3 years, magna cum laude from Willamette University, and he comes out and he sees this guy coming from prison, and he's making all this weight. Same time he got out, I got out, and it was
different paths.
Yes, and damn, you know, and but you know what? We finally got some advice. We got a family business shrink. So to speak, and we finally, through a lot of fighting, a lot of just really close to fisticuffs, we finally figured out that we were on the same page on a vision and a mission, and we didn't know what a vision and a mission were before that, you know, and once we figured that out, we were able to sit in the same room together.
Yeah, defining roles, and your relationship blossomed from that point on.
Yeah. I'll tell you what, well, you asked me earlier, it didn't, but when it's all said and done and we went through all the craziness we went through, we are good now because the heat's off, the pressure is off in that way, you know.
Yeah. What did you guys intend to build a company as large as you did with the intention of selling the company?
Never. I never foresaw that until we got to a point where we didn't have the means. We had to bring on private equity in order to grow to the next level and in order to bring on expertise that we needed to go further. So once that process started happening, my baby started to outgrow me. And once you get to a certain point, the way that you envision things in the first place changes because it's no longer your baby. And then it's like, okay, no, we're going to grow this and sell it.
What was that like, letting your baby go at that time?
It was rough. Part of it was I became so successful in a way that I didn't imagine becoming successful, and sort of a rock star mentality that went along with drinking to celebrate, celebrating, and continuing to do my thing, but thinking I was doing well. But little things started to happen, little problems started to happen, and they always were way bigger because I was in the public eye. And it just got so ugly. And finally the pressure, even though I quit drinking for a period, it got out of control. I had a mental breakdown in the streets that pretty much probably everybody in this room knows about.
Yeah, I got that call early that morning.
I was on my way to your house.
I know,
It's
you're
your
on my
fault.
way to the house that day, or the day before. Wish you would have made it.
Yeah.
I would have wrestled you down. I understand you
drinks.
had, when you first started the company, and of course things were going well, and you started bringing on some of your, because you saw that you yourself could change and start a new life. You started bringing on employees. At one point, about 30% of your employees were formerly.
I think it's still that way. What I know, from what I can tell, it's still that way. That's something that's, it's the legacy of Dave's Killer Bread. But in the early days, we didn't go, well, let's hire 30% ex-cons. That's crazy. You just hire the right people for the job. Yeah. We knew that they could be amazing. I was a pretty amazing employee. So why couldn't other people be?
Yeah. I had a chance to go and meet Dave at the facility during that time for part of our interview that we taped. And what I really learned from talking to some of the employees that had success, that were there for a number of years and got put into some management roles, what I saw and talk about giving them a chance is a real gratitude. The ones that really made it, they were thankful for the opportunity because they didn't have opportunities like they do today because of the economy and whatever. Yeah. So is there anyone that stands out or that you can look at, and maybe the guy's still there, or the woman's still there?
Wow, you snuck that one in on me.
I snuck that one in.
Any particular people? I see lots of people. You never know, there might be somebody in this room, but a lot of them have become executives in a bigger company. They've just made a career out of this. I don't have any specific examples off the top of my head.
Yeah. But it was really wonderful to meet them and see their excitement, and you guys did a great job of taking care of them and giving them that opportunity, even though not all of them succeeded.
No, and it's just like anything else. You take a chance on everybody you hire, and we hired. There was a period where I think we hired 75 people in 4 months. We didn't have the ability to do it right, but we did our best. And the thing is, once they figured out that we were hiring ex-felons, that's all the temp agencies would send us. So we're getting, when I realized that was happening, I was like, no, that ain't cool. But but that was one of the reasons why we had so many of them. And I'm glad it happened.
Yeah. When you talking to the audience, talking to the entrepreneurs out here, the early growth stage companies, what piece of advice would you give them? If there's one thing that stands out, or a few things coupled with that one thing, what would you tell them that you learned through this experience?
Well, I think that the takeaway for me, and I knew this before it all happened, and essentially it's, success for me wasn't Dave's Killer Bread. It was Dave's Killer Bread was a result of my success, and being in line with your, values and beliefs, finding humility so you're open to growth, and loving yourself through every struggle and so-called failure. To me, that's success. The rest is icing on the cake. I read that, by the way. So.
Well, yeah, I wanted him to share that because through the years, we've had numbers of conversations and times together. And what came out was he was at his happiest before financial success came, because he was passionate, he was purposeful, and that's why it was so hard for him to leave when they sold the company, because that was his passion and purpose, and he had to
Yeah.
redefine himself.
Well, that was the pure part. You know, the first several years of Dave's Killer Bread, I was able to maintain what the happiness that I had before Dave's Killer Bread. In fact, I was even happier because now I was making something that people were just reacting so strongly to, and people loved me, you know, and my bread, and that was amazing. But that can go the wrong way, and it did. So.
And the other thing, you talk about creativity because you sold the company. And I asked you the other day, I said, so what are you creating now? Because you're a creative person. Because I create every day. There's always some solution I have to figure out or innovate, you know. And so talk about your life today.
Well, there's so many things I do. One of the ways that I healed from the incident in 2013, one of the ways I did that, was I got into something that had nothing to do with me. It was African art, African tribal art, and so I went crazy with it. I have 20,000 square feet full of it, you know, and so I'm still managing that, dealing with, you know, the business of that, and there's problems and solutions every day, and it's fun. It's not profitable, but it's fun. And so there's that, and I get so many opportunities every day. There's another opportunity, you know, that somebody comes up with, and for me, a problem is always waiting for a solution. And, you know, I have lots of experience finding solutions to problems.
Yeah. And
sometimes the problem is actually how do you make a product that is going to kick ass? You know, that's a big problem.
That is a big problem.
And innovating is a solution.
Yeah. The last few years, and you know, since you sold, African art has been a big passion. I noticed you've really got involved with the community and with the nonprofits in the community. It seems like every other week there's something you're giving back. You talk about your giving back to the community. What does that mean to you?
Really, it's natural. It comes from the heart. Even from the early days of Dave's Killer Bread, I realized that I had value beyond, that my story had value, that my experience had value, and people reacted well to it. I had the perfect storm of being able to go out and tell my story and promote my product at the same time. I'd bring boxes of bread and I'd throw them into the audience.
I thought about it.
I don't represent the company anymore, so I can't do that. But if they didn't like what I said, they liked what I threw at them. So I always was a success.
Yeah, that's great.
But yeah, I mean, that goes on and on. But it's never the material side that makes it. It's that overarching sort of meaning, that you have this meaning in your life. Yeah. And I mean, coming from where I've been to where I'm today, it's phenomenal, and it's bigger than me.
You recently did a walk, and you do it every year for NAMI.
National Alliance for Mental Illness.
Right, so talk a little bit about, because that's a big topic out there now, mental illness and being functional and managing through that. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Well, I think almost everybody, I think, if not everybody, has experienced being mentally ill. You may not want to admit it, but you have been. And you had a moment, you know, and you've been depressed or whatever. I realize it's a complicated thing, and everybody's got a different level of it. And some people function well on it, and then all of a sudden, you know, something happens. For me, it was stress and enough resentment and things led me to a manic breakdown. So I understand for me how it works. Yeah. I understand that if I don't get that stress, I don't drink and I don't do whatever, I'm going to be okay. Other people have more serious problems, but it's not about, you know, the stigma's got to go. Yeah. That's the thing. The less there's a stigma about it, the more open our hearts and the more ways people can benefit.
Great. Well, David, first of all, thank you.
Thank you.
And
Thank you.
we're going to take some time now for some Q&A, and they're graciously giving us some time for that. So if you guys have some questions, we'll toss you a box. If you can catch it, that's the key.
Yay.
Hey.
Hi, I'm Ashley.
What's that?
Ashley.
Ashley.
Ashley Chase, that's me. So your story really hit home with me. My older brother is in and out of jail, a heroin addict on the streets, and it's been about 7 years since he's been like that. And we grew up super sheltered and really.
Hold on, can you,
Should I get rid of this?
there you go.
So my older brother is in and out of jail, heroin addict, and not doing well. And I feel like he thinks that this is who he is. This is his identity. That's his community. He
Yeah.
gets out of jail and goes right back to his friends within that community. And I'm wondering, first of all, how can I, as a little sister, make him realize that this isn't who he is, and that he has so much more to offer the world? And second of all,
That's a tough one.
can I organize for you to talk with him?
How would I do that?
I'll figure it out.
I can't say no to that, but hey, I will. And that's really the solution. I mean, it's a solution. The bottom line is everyone's got to find their own. I've seen a lot of heroin addicts overcome, and I was an opiate addict myself at one point. Opiates suck and they're really tough, but the big problem in your brother's case, of course, is that's his culture, and he doesn't see himself any other way. That's the way I was too. So, but I came to the end of my rope. The only way a person changes is that they suffer. They suffer enough, in my opinion, they suffer enough that they don't want to do it anymore. If he's going to continue to if he likes what he does, it's going to be hard to change him. That's just my. Yeah, I'll slap him around for you.
Anybody else?
I talked to this youngster earlier.
Yeah.
This is interesting.
How's it going?
So how did you prepare your employees for executive positions? Because that's a very complicated subject, and a lot of companies hire an executive from another company. How did you go about that?
Wow, man, that's a long story, but a good question. In the early days of Dave's Killer Bread, when we got to the level of maybe 100 employees, and we're starting to hire executives instead of just my brother, my nephew, and myself being the executives, we made nothing but mistakes. That's all we did is make mistakes when we hired them. And it was one disaster after another. They're always jackasses every damn time. Truthfully, the hiring from within was always a better way in our company, but I know that we had some good success with outside too. And the culture just had to grow. It just had to grow.
Would you focus on team building activities or mentorship program for them, or what type of things did you do from within?
Well, you know what? A lot of that stuff was not. By the time we were doing executives, I wasn't hiring executives and building into the executive thing. I was more of a spiritual leader and the guy out. I was a product developer, marketing and product development and quality control. So I can't say that I know exactly the solutions that we came up with there. But it was a lot of trial and error. I can say that much. And hiring from within was pretty successful for us.
Thank you very much.
Watching people grow.
Can you toss that far?
Try.
Check out your arm. Oh, that's pretty
Nice. Oh, man, that was catchable.
good.
Love the jacket. Wow.
What's that?
Am I making this thing?
Yeah.
Wow.
You're holding the rock.
I love your jacket. That's pretty awesome.
Thanks.
So what in your life taught you balance?
Balance?
Yeah, Dr. Seuss mentions about life's a great balancing act. Obviously, you found balance. How did you find, or what is balance?
Well, balance is, you know what? When I used to be at the farmer's market in the early days and I was working 100 hours a week and loving it, I used to have people that would tell me, Dave, you need balance. And I'd be like, no, I don't. Sorry, you need balance. I don't. But, you know, as time went by, I had family, you know, I developed, there's other things outside of the business. But in the early days, I can't say that balance would have done me any good. But now I do have balance. So believe me, I'm not the expert about balance.
That's good. Good answer.
Anybody else? Way back there.
So you obviously have a great product. What was great about you? What are you particularly awesome at that you think contributed to the success of Dave's Bread?
Well, I made a great product. I think that's what the ability to make that product came from a lifetime of failures and success, you know, not a whole lot of successes, and being ready to create a great product and the ability, the desire, the passion to work hard and not give up, and you know, because there was a lot of resistance to me, and you know, I was shooting from the hip when I got out. I didn't know what I was doing, but I knew I was going to do something, and that wasn't always taken well. So the things that I value about myself, that I've learned, the lessons that I've learned, that make me capable of doing the things that I've done, are humility, acceptance, and the ability to grow and learn and from other people, and courage. You know, and courage comes from humility and it comes from acceptance. So I know that some people may recognize those attributes as part of a 12-step program, but they're life principles that work for me.
I think out of the foundation that he just mentioned, one of the successes that I see in him and I've seen through the years is he's not afraid to always be himself. He always shows up as Dave. He's not going to come there and show up as anything but Dave. And to me, that's a strength. That's power. So.
Thank you.
Yeah.
If I was somebody else, though, may not be, right?
That's
I mean,
right.
sometimes you don't want to show up because, like, if I had been me 20, 30 years ago,
you might not show up.
I wouldn't show up as that guy.
Or if they told you, you need to show up this way, and
Yeah.
you know it's not you.
Well, that was what it was. I was telling myself I had to be a certain way instead of being that guy.
Yeah. I'm glad you're that guy.
Thank you. I'm glad you're that guy.
Hey, Dave. I have a question about what you do when you worked with family members, a business partner. What kind of strategies and techniques do you use to like kind of get along? I heard that
to get
really
along?
get along. But how'd you kind of weave around obstacles?
You mean the family business dynamics?
Yeah.
That was always a challenge. It never went away, but we found ways to mitigate it through. We asked for help. We asked for somebody to come in and referee and help us find solutions because we weren't finding them on our own. We were at each other's throats. So that dynamic is really hard. And for me, again, humility and acceptance are really powerful. If you don't think you're all that, and you're open to other people's sides of things, as well as going, well, this is what it is, and not trying to think that it's something it isn't, then if you're looking at things exactly as they are, that's perfect. And maybe somebody else isn't, but you accept that too.
We have time for one more question.
This guy right here.
Your product is awesome, by the way.
Thank you.
What were some of the strategies you did when you were developing it? Did you just go to farmers markets? Because it's
No, I had,
outstanding bread.
it was a lot of fun to create. I got out chomping at the bit to do something, and I had been in prison learning a trade, drafting. As a drafter, you create products, in a sense. And that's what I just took the same kind of mindset. So, yes, I went around and I found ingredients that I looked for ingredients. I went to Bob's Red Mill. Everybody knows Bob's Red Mill. And I looked, I went through and I just started picking stuff out, and I was like, this will make good product. And I looked at what other people were making, and I learned to replicate those products so that I could know what I was trying to beat. And that's what I did. I used scientific method. 4 or 5 batches with slightly different, each batch is slightly different than the other one, and you keep records, and you learn from each batch you make. And finally, we took it to the farmer's market, and I got to test market it on people. It's a perfect world. So test marketing is crucial.
And well, thanks, Dave. Thanks, everyone. And thanks to the sponsors. Thanks, EDCO. Thank you to the investors and the money you're going to be kicking out here at the end of the day tomorrow. And we really are thankful for the opportunity to be here.
Thanks.